Have you ever wondered why your cat seems to deliberately ignore you almost defiantly right after misbehaving? You've tried to correct it, but the bad behavior persists, whether it's scratching the sofa, chewing on cables, or climbing where it shouldn't. Today, in MeowTube, we address a fundamental issue that generates deep frustration in human-cat coexistence: punishment. We will dismantle and debunk the myths and explain why traditional punitive methodologies not only fail, but are counterproductive. Welcome to MeowTube, the channel for cat lovers. Part 1. Feline psychology: why traditional punishment fails. Let's first understand the fundamental truth about punishment in the feline context. The concept of punishing a cat for unwanted behavior is, in itself, a fundamental error, and an anthropomorphic projection of our social psychology onto a species with a radically different cognitive and social operating system. The domestic cat, Felis catus, comes from a fundamentally solitary ancestor, the Libyan cat. Their domestication, or more accurately their commensalism, was a process of self-selection. Cats approached human settlements not to serve us, but to hunt the rodents attracted to our grain stores. Their social structure is not hierarchical, but territorial. A cat does not perceive us as its master or its boss. At best, it considers us a non-hostile social peer, a reliable source of resources, or perhaps a surrogate maternal figure. The concept of disappointing an authority figure does not exist in its mind. Therefore, when we apply punishment expecting the cat to understand a social norm it has broken, while we are speaking a language the animal is cognitively incapable of processing, the cat does not seek our social approval, it seeks its own safety, comfort, and stimulation. So why does our cat misbehave? The answer is simple. It doesn't. There's no malice in its actions. The cat isn't scratching the sofa out of revenge because you were late, nor is it urinating on your bed to annoy you. These are human interpretations. The behaviors we label as bad are invariably manifestations of unmet needs or uncontrollable instincts. We can group the root causes into three main categories. First reason: boredom. The cat is a crepuscular predator designed by millions of years of evolution for a specific activity cycle: stalk, chase, catch, kill, and eat. In a sterile apartment, mine where food appears effortlessly in a bowl and the environment never changes, this cognitive and physical energy has no outlet. Chronic boredom breeds frustration, and frustration leads to redirected behaviors. Chewing on cables isn't malice, it's tactile exploration. Knocking objects off shelves is a desperate attempt to interact with an unresponsive environment. Chasing our ankles is the only available moving prey. Second reason: stress or fear. The cat is a neophobic creature, that is to say, be suspicious. Cats are instinctively drawn to novelty and extremely sensitive to the stability of their territory. A change in the litter box, the arrival of new furniture, loud noises from nearby construction, the presence of a strange cat at the window, or even a change in our work schedule can generate extreme levels of anxiety. But how does a cat manifest stress? Through behaviors that, from its perspective, increase its sense of security. Urine marking, spraying, is not a hygiene issue. It's a desperate territorial signal to say, this is my safe space. Excessive vertical scratching on door frames is also visual and olfactory marking. Sudden aggression is usually a response to fear or overstimulation that it doesn't know how to handle. Third reason: instinct. There are behaviors that are non-negotiable for an animal because they are part of its biological identity. Scratching is a prime example. The cat needs to scratch. It doesn't do it to destroy the sofa. It does it to keep its claws functional by removing old covers, to fully stretch its spine and muscles, essential for an ambush predator, and, crucially, to mark its territory. The pads of its paws contain scent glands that deposit pheromones, creating a property signal that gives it security. Asking a cat not to scratch is like asking us not to stretch in the morning. Climbing to high places is not disobedience. It is the instinctive need to control its territory from a safe vantage point, a vestige of its need to watch for prey and predators. Here we arrive at the great methodological error, the punishment applied after the fact. Let's suppose we arrive home and find that the cat has destroyed a cushion. The The cat is probably sleeping peacefully in another room. If we go pick it up, take it to the scene of the crime, and yell at it or tap it on the nose, we have failed completely. And the neuroscience of feline association is clear. For a cat to connect a consequence, the punishment, with an action, destroying the cushion, the consequence must occur at the precise moment of the action, ideally in less than 2 or 3 seconds. If 5 minutes or an hour have passed, the cat is cognitively incapable of establishing the causal relationship. In the scenario described, the cat doesn't learn, "I shouldn't destroy cushions." What it learns is, my human, upon arriving home, becomes erratic, aggressive, and dangerous for no apparent reason. The result is not the correction of the behavior, but the erosion of the bond, the induction of fear toward the caregiver, and an increase in overall stress, which, ironically, can increase destructive behaviors as an outlet for this new anxiety. To be absolutely clear in practice, we must establish the 3 fundamental nevers when trying to correct a cat. These are ethical and practical red lines that should never be crossed, because the only result is psychological harm and a broken bond. First, never. Physical violence. This includes any form of aggression, hitting of course, but also so-called taps on the nose, shaking or jerking, especially dangerous, or scruffing, grabbing them by the scruff of the neck. In the feline world, direct physical confrontation is the last, desperate and extreme resort. It is reserved for self-defense or for territorial disputes of the highest intensity. When a human being, a giant 15 times larger, initiates aggressive physical contact, the cat does not interpret it as disciplinary correction. It interprets it as a mortal threat. The biological response to this is terror. The cat does not learn the lesson. It learns that its caregiver is a source of pain and danger. This generates 2 possible pathological outcomes: defensive aggression, the cat that hisses, bites, or scratches when petted because it anticipates being hit, or learned helplessness, an apathetic, chronically stressed animal that lives in fear. Second, never. Shout or use their name in vain. A cat's hearing sensitivity is exponentially greater than a human's. A scream is not just unpleasant, it's physically painful and terrifying. But the most serious mistake here is the noise pollution of its own identity, its name. A cat's name, Simba, Luna, Mochi, should be an anchor of absolute positivity. It should be associated exclusively with pleasurable experiences, food, play, petting, and being called for something good. When the cat is scratching the sofa and the human yells "Simba, no," we are creating a toxic association. Simba learns that the sound Simba precedes a terrifying experience, the scream. The direct result is that the cat will stop responding to the call. We are burning through a vital tool of communication and security. The cat will not only associate its name with something negative, but it may generalize this to our voice, becoming wary whenever we speak to it in a tone that isn't perfectly soft. Third, never. The use of water spray. Many defend this method, claiming that it works. And it's true that the cat stops the behavior immediately. But it's crucial to understand because it stops him. It doesn't stop him because he's learned that scratching the sofa is wrong. It stops him for 2 reasons. The sound of the spray bottle mimics the hiss of a snake or another hostile cat, triggering a threat response, and the sensation of water is universally unpleasant for them. It is, in essence, a punishment based on startle and aversion. The fundamental problem lies in the association. Who is holding the spray bottle? The human. The cat doesn't learn the sofa is unpleasant. The cat learns, my human, unpredictably, attacks me with a threatening sound and cold water when I'm near the sofa. The evidence of this failure is clear. The cat will simply wait until the human is gone to scratch the sofa again. We haven't solved the scratching instinct. We've only taught the cat to be more stealthy. The real damage, however, is the fracturing of the bond. The cat, which should see its caregiver as the ultimate source of security and comfort, now has to be on high alert, watching to see if that same caregiver has become a source of random discomfort. This creates a constant state of low-level anxiety that is deeply detrimental to the animal's well-being. We've already explained why traditional punitive methods not only fail, but actively destroy the bond with your cat. Now that you know what to never do, it's time to learn proactive solutions. If this in-depth analysis has been enlightening and you want to build a relationship based on respect, not fear, we invite you to subscribe to the channel to continue exploring the feline world. Part 2. The best punishment is prevention, how to prevent misbehavior. The best punishment, if we may continue to use this terminology for the discussion, is the one that is never needed. A proactive strategy for environmental modification is the cornerstone of successful coexistence. Strategy number 1. Environmental enrichment. This technical term is not a luxury but a biological necessity. It defines the process of adapting the domestic environment, inherently poor and sterile for a predator, to satisfy the cat's ethological needs. An enriched environment prevents the emergence of unwanted behaviors by channeling instincts, scratching, climbing, hunting, toward acceptable goals, thus eliminating boredom and reducing stress. The two primary causes of the bad behavior we discussed in Part 1. If we don't provide a legitimate outlet for instinct, the cat will find one on its own, and that outlet is likely to conflict with our household rules. Let's address the most common conflict, furniture scratching. As we established, the cat needs scratching. Therefore, the solution isn't to prevent scratching, but to offer a scratching post that's logistically superior to our sofa. This is where the science of the perfect scratcher comes in. The failure of many cat owners lies in buying an unsuitable scratcher. To be effective, a scratcher must meet 3 non-negotiable criteria. First, stability. It must be absolutely solid. A scratcher that wobbles or tips over upon first use is perceived by the cat as unsafe and will be abandoned immediately. The animal must be able to confidently throw its full weight against it. Second, height. It must be tall enough to allow for a full vertical stretch. For an average adult cat, we're talking about a minimum of 80 to 90 centimeters of scratching surface. Low posts that force the cat to hunch over don't satisfy the ergonomic need for muscle stretching. Third, the material. The surface must be satisfactory. Woven sisal, rope or carpet is the gold standard, as it offers the perfect resistance for nail maintenance, unlike soft carpet fabrics that can snag them. However, the most critical factor for the success of a scratching post is its location. A common mistake is to hide the scratching post in a back room or basement so it's out of the way. This ignores the primary function of scratching, territorial marking. Cats scratch in visible, high-traffic areas to leave their visual and olfactory signal. Therefore, the scratching post should be placed where the cat needs to mark its territory. Initially, this means placing the scratching post right next to the furniture being scratched. If the target is the sofa, the scratching post should be attached to the corner of the sofa. Once the cat is consistently using the scratching post, it can be gradually moved a few centimeters a day to a more convenient location nearby. To encourage its use, you can rub catnip on it or use wand toys to entice the cat to dig its claws into the right surface. The goal is to make the scratching post the most attractive and prominent option in the environment. Let us now consider the problem of biting cables. This behavior is usually motivated by boredom, dental exploration, especially in young cats, or in some cases, pica. Prevention here is purely environmental management. There are direct physical solutions, such as cable protectors or coiled sleeves, which create a physical barrier. For more persistent cases, taste deterrents can be applied, such as non-toxic, bitter sprays designed for pets. It is vital to understand that this spray is applied to the object, the cable, not the animal. The cat thus learns that the object itself has an unpleasant taste, a direct and effective association that doesn't involve the caregiver or generate fear. The simplest management, of course, is to limit access. Unplug appliances when not in use, and use cable management boxes to conceal power strips. Another common conflictive behavior is the access to unwanted areas like the kitchen counter or a work desk. We must remember a cat's vertical instinct. It seeks height to control its territory and feel safe. If the only attractive high point in the room is the counter, the cat will use it. The solution? Therefore, is not to punish the cat for climbing, but to offer it a more desirable vertical alternative. This is what we call verticalizing the space. Installing dedicated wall shelves, freeing up the top of a bookcase, or, ideally, acquiring a multi-level cat tree solves this problem at its root. These trees or structures should be placed in strategic locations, such as near a window, providing cat TV, an endless source of visual stimulation, or in the same room where the problematic behavior occurs, offering a vantage point higher than the forbidden zone. By providing an acceptable yes, its tower, the no, the counter, becomes less relevant. Strategy number 2. Play with your cat. Underlying many of these problems of boredom and destructiveness is a lack of energy release. Now, this is where the caregiver's direct responsibility comes into play, interactive play. The game is not a whim, it's the simulation of hunting, a fundamental biological need. 15 minutes of structured play a day can radically transform a cat's behavior. We're not talking about throwing a toy mouse on the floor, we're talking about play.interactive using fishing rod toys, a stick with a string and a lure. This type of toy allows us to simulate the movement of prey, a bird in flight, an insect hiding behind furniture. We must allow the cat to complete the hunting cycle, stalking, chasing, and, crucially, catching. Denying the cat the opportunity to capture the toy, as with the exclusive use of a laser pointer, generates immense frustration. The play session should allow for multiple attempts to catch the toy and should end by allowing the cat to finally catch it. Ideally, this play session should conclude with a meal or treat. This completes the biological cycle, hunt, kill, eat, and provides a profound chemical satisfaction in the cat's brain, drastically reducing anxiety and pent-up energy that would otherwise be released would redirect towards the furniture or the cables. Strategy number 3. Anticipate disaster. Ultimately, the most effective preventative strategy is anticipating disaster, or simply managing the environment. This requires accepting feline nature and adapting our living space. Frankly, it's easier to modify the environment than to try to retrain an age-old instinct. If the cat chews on plants, the solution is to remove them. Many common houseplants, such as irises or philodendrons, are also highly toxic. They should be removed or placed in physically inaccessible locations while offering safe alternatives like catnip or catgrass. If the cat knocks fragile objects off shelves, whether for exploration or to get attention, those objects should be put away. Securing valuables with museum-grade putty or simply accepting that a house with a predatory cat cannot have delicate ornaments within reach is part of responsible pet ownership. This managing the environment philosophy eliminates the opportunity for bad behavior to occur. Instead of creating constant conflict with the animal, we remove the point of friction. This proactivity is the highest form of care and the only one that guarantees a harmonious coexistence in the long term. Now you have the prevention strategies. You know how environmental enrichment, the right scratching post, and interactive play eliminate the root of the problem. If this guide on how to anticipate conflict has provided you with real value, we would appreciate it if you indicated this with a like. It's the best way to support the creation of rigorous and ethical content about feline behavior. Part 3. The correct method, how to correct on the spot. For the correction to be effective, you must adhere to an unbreakable golden rule, a temporal principle that defines the absolute success or failure of our intervention. We must catch the cat in the act. The window of causal association in the feline mind, as we mentioned, is extremely short. If the unwanted behavior, for example, scratching the sofa, has occurred and the cat has already moved away, we have lost our chance. If more than 5 seconds have passed, any intervention will be interpreted as random aggression on our part. It's too late. The cat's brain will not connect our action with its own. Therefore, the entire correction strategy that we will outline below depends on active vigilance and an immediate response, occurring the very second the unwanted behavior begins. If we have managed to fulfill the golden rule, we will apply the first technique, interruption. This is the effective scolding. Its purpose is not to frighten, but to divert. The goal is to use a deterrent sound that is startling enough to stop the action, but not attributable to us. Herein lies the most important nuance. We must not shout or use our voice. The interruption must be impersonal, a firm, sharp "sst," mimicking an animal's snort, a universal warning signal, or a single, sharp, loud clap, or even a sharp rap on a nearby table. The sound must be short and sharp. Crucially, as we make this sound, we mustn't look at the cat. We must appear to be preoccupied with something else as if the sound had emanated from the universe itself, or, better yet, from the object that was being damaged. The psychological objective of this technique is fundamental. The cat must associate the act, scratching the sofa, and not the caregiver, with an immediate and slightly unpleasant consequence. If the cat looks at us and sees us shouting, it learns, my human is dangerous when I'm near the sofa. If the cat is scratching, hears a sudden and annoying st, but sees us looking out the window, it learns, this sofa sometimes makes a horrible sound when I scratch it. We have created a non-social aversive stimulus, and the cat begins to perceive the forbidden object as inherently unpleasant or unpredictable, while we remain a constant source of security. This dissociation between the caregiver and the correction is vital to preserving the bond. Immediately after the successful interruption, Technique 1, the cat will have stopped and will be in a momentary state of alert, searching for the source of the disturbance. At this precise moment, we must apply the Technique 2, redirection. This is by far the most overlooked step, yet the most constructive. Interruption has only communicated a no, but the cat still has a biological need to satisfy the need to scratch in our example. If we only interrupt, the frustration of that unresolved instinct will build up, and the cat will simply try again later or find another unsuitable object. Redirection provides the yes. Right after the psst, we must guide the cat toward the correct alternative. This should be done calmly and positively. We can gently call him, this time using his name in a kind tone, toward the scratching post, which, as we established in Part 2, is conveniently nearby. We can take his favorite toy and pretend to play a game on the scratching post. The goal is to shift his attention from the forbidden object to the permitted one. If we manage to get him to dig his claws, even minimally, into the scratching post, we have laid the foundation for success. We are actively rewriting the cat's behavioral map, teaching him the acceptable outlet for his instinct. Now, what happens when the unwanted behavior is directed towards us, such as rough play biting or scratching our hands? Here we apply the Technique 3, the only punishment that cats instinctively understand, and that is ethically impeccable, the withdrawal of attention. In behavioral terminology, this is called negative punishment, which does not mean bad, but rather implies the withdrawal, negative, of something desirable, our attention, to decrease the probability of a behavior. The classic scenario is a cat or kitten playing with our hands and suddenly biting too hard. At the precise moment of the painful bite, we must react. The reaction should be both vocal and physical. Vocally, a sharp, firm ow, but not a scream of terror. This sound mimics the yelp of a littermate, the universal feline signal that means you've gone too far, that hurts. Immediately after the ow, we apply the physical consequence, complete withdrawal. Or if we're on the floor, we get up and leave the room. If we're on the sofa, we get up and turn our backs on the cat. The game ends instantly and completely. This brings us to the concept of time out. The cat, especially if it's young, was seeking interaction. By biting, it gets the opposite, the disappearance of its playmate. We should completely ignore it for a period of 5 to 10 minutes. This means not looking at him, not speaking to him, and not touching him. For a social animal that actively seeks our attention, this sudden indifference is the most profound and clear punishment there is. It doesn't generate fear, it doesn't generate aggression, it generates confusion and subsequently learning. The cat learns the direct correlation. Gentle play equals play continues. Hard bite equals play ends. It's a social language they understand perfectly. Finally, none of these correction techniques would be complete without the counterpart that seals the learning, the Technique 4, positive reinforcement. Behavior modification isn't just about eliminating negative behaviors, it's much more important about actively building positive ones. The feline brain, like the human brain, is programmed to repeat actions that lead to reward. We must become active observers of good behavior. If we have redirected the cat from the sofa to the scratching post, Technique 2, and the cat uses the scratching post, we should reward it immediately. The very second its claws scratch the sisal, we must administer the reinforcement. This can be a high-value reward, a piece of chicken, a freeze-dried treat, a burst of enthusiastic verbal praise, well done, aye, good cat, or a stroke if the cat enjoys it in that context, timing. It is as crucial here as it was in the interruption. The reward must be simultaneous with the desired act. Similarly, if we are in a play session and the cat plays without biting, using only its clawless paws, we should verbally reinforce this behavior during the game. You play so well. If we apply technique 3, withdrawal of attention, because the cat has bitten us, and after the timeout, we interact again, and this time the cat plays gently, we must reward that gentle play. This positive reinforcement closes the learning cycle in the most powerful way. The cat not only learns to avoid the sofa, which makes an unpleasant sound, or not to bite, which makes its human disappear, but it learns much more powerfully, and that using the scratching post or playing gently brings wonderful consequences. We are creating an enthusiastic positive association with the correct behavior. This is the only way to ensure a permanent change in behavior based not on fear of retaliation, but on the active desire for the reward and the strengthening of the bond. Correcting a cat isn't about punishment, but about communication, patience, and deep love. That's the true secret to strengthening your lifelong bond. Tell me in the comments about your experience applying these techniques and what you've discovered about your feline companion. If you value this respectful approach and want to delve deeper into their fascinating world, subscribe so you don't miss any videos from this community.